All right, so we uh, reached the high point in the third meditation, which is the proof of the existence of God, roughly based on the idea of perfection that Descartes finds in himself. So, right, the existence of the idea of perfection uh, is evidence that some perfect being must have been the cause of that idea of perfection. Now, one of the main things that we might say in response to Descartes' idea here is that this idea of perfection uh, is uh, is invented, right? Why do we know that this idea of perfection is not one of the things that he um, dreams up himself, one of the invented uh, or adventitious ideas, an idea that we get somehow through spontaneous impulse rather than the natural light? Why is this idea of perfection something that he takes to have objective truth? Uh, well, one reason would be um, the experience of truth that he has in the cogito, right? Uh, in that experience, as I mentioned, right, where he recognizes the criteria of truth, clarity, and distinctness, that experience is an experience of the truth and the perfection of the truth, right? Uh, it's an experience of uh, something which seems independent of him in the sense that he cannot be the sole author of this truth. It's what I'm trying to get at here is that truth is perfection. And by encountering the truth of the cogito, the I think, therefore I am, he encounters this perfection, has an experience of this perfection, right? That idea of perfection comes from uh, the cogito, right? So it's not as though the idea of perfection that he's working with is, um, like a perfect meal or a perfect afternoon, which would obviously be have nothing to do with the natural light or logic in itself. They would be, subjective, individualistic ideas. Uh, so this truth that he finds, this perfection that he finds in himself, this idea of perfection, uh, is one that belongs to the natural light because it is at this point identical to truth. Right now, this is really the key thing about Descartes' concept of God and proof of God. And we'll go into this more when we discuss the fourth meditation and fifth. Um, that the God whose existence is proved here is not the God of the Bible per se. Um, it is not a God uh, necessarily that mm, has goodwill or um, not anyway in the sense that you might imagine in Christian theology. God is essentially identical to truth here. Um, and the truth is perfect. And the truth is independent of Descartes' mind. Uh, in the experience of the cogito, we have an experience of truth, and that truth is perfect, and that perfection is the God that he's talking about. And so, uh, what he finds is the basis for truth or the criteria of truth. He gets a model for truth. So we'll talk more in the next video about the next lecture about the relationship between God and truth. Um, and there's just really one more point I want to touch on in the third meditation, which is an important point for modern metaphysics. This is on page 49 in the Universal Pagination. And it has to do with time. Now, a number of things to say about time and the relation to truth and the relationship between the thinking subject, the I, and the external world. What is it that connects the moments of thought that make up a thinking thing? I'm a thinking thing. That is a thing that affirms, denies, judges, perceives, and wills. Right? There are these different acts of thought, and each act is discrete insofar as right, I move from affirming to denying. And in that movement from one act of thought to another, I have discrete moments of thought. How do I know that those discrete moments of thought belong to the same subject, the same I? What is it that unifies all these acts of thought into a thinking thing? What is it that provides the substance of mind to these acts of thought? So, what is it that unifies the I? Right? And this is a similar question to one that we asked earlier, which is roughly, how do I get the I from thinking? I know that there's thinking. How do I know that it is I who am doing the thinking? It's a similar question to what unites these moments of thought. Uh, Similarly, we'd ask, what is it that unites the solid wax and the liquid wax? What is that substance that unifies these things? Right? And in this, we see the unity or the potential unity between temporality and subjectivity and the I. So far as the acts of thought are united in time through the I. Similarly, we might say the unity of the wax depends upon the unity of time, or even the subjects, that is, the I's experience of the temporality of the wax. And I think that this question of unity through time is a question also of the unity of causation. So on page 49, he writes, I do not escape the force of these arguments by supposing that I have always existed as I do now, as if it had followed from this that there was no need to look for any author of my existence. For it is quite clear to anyone who attentively considers the nature of time that the same power and action are needed to preserve anything at each individual moment of its duration, as would be required to create things anew if it were not yet in existence. Hence, the distinction between preservation and creation is only a conceptual one. And this is one of the things that are evident by the natural light. So, creation and preservation are the same. The distinction is only a conceptual one. Now, what this means is that the same power that brings something into existence is also the power that preserves that thing, unifies that thing as itself. What does that mean, right? What causes a thing to come into existence is also what causes it to stay in existence. If we think about, well, there's sort of a we could sort of take a shortcut here and say, for example, in biology, right? It is we understand uh, it is the same sort of DNA, the same DNA that causes a thing to right, be created as what it is. That is the unification of two strands of DNA through um, procreation. Uh, that then also preserves that thing. Right? Your DNA brings you into existence and is also responsible for continuing to make you what you are through your life. Uh, but I think Descartes has a slightly more obscure concept, not that DNA is uh, not obscure, but that whatever it is that brought all of being into existence must also be perpetually keeping what is in existence. If we think about this in terms of God, right? God created the universe. But in order for the universe to continue to exist and function, in order for it itself to produce cause and effect, in order for it to produce anything, in effect, it also must be imbued with the power to cause, to bring about effects. This power to cause doesn't lie in the universe itself, which is, after all, an effect of God, who is the cause. So, an effect can't be a cause. And in order for an effect to act as a cause, it must get that power from the original cause. God brings the universe into effect, into being, as an effect. God is the cause, the universe is the effect. But the universe then causes everything else to come into being, right? Big Bang causes the expansion of space, causes the, uh, forgive my astrophysics, right? uh, causes the explosion of mass, which results in the formation of planets, etc. Right? All those things can be seen as effects, nothing more than effects. So either everything is an effect of the first cause, whether we call that God, the Big Bang. So everything that exists is an effect of the same cause, whatever in the first place caused the universe to come into existence. And every chain of causes and effects in the universe is actually just a chain of effects stemming back from that first cause, which brought all of being into existence. To the extent that we say anything in the universe is a cause of anything, we would have to say that the power to be a cause ultimately derives from that first cause, which made its effects capable of being understood as causes. I am an effect of the causation of the universe. To the extent that I am able to cause anything to happen on my own, that power of causation derives from that which caused me to come into existence. That is, whatever caused the universe to come into existence. And so every cause must draw its power, must be preserved by that first cause. So this is an incredibly important observation, and it will be this idea that ends up being essential to the debate between rationalists and empiricists in many ways. This is what will set up the ultimate confrontation between Spinoza and Hume. So, insofar as I can imagine a cause of perfection, I am imagining a cause that is perfect. And that perfect being, which causes the idea of perfection, will also be that which holds the universe together, makes it continue to be what it is. Now, I cannot be, Descartes cannot be this cause. Why? We've already seen that Descartes is imperfect and therefore can't be the cause of anything perfect, that Descartes is limited, right? There's lots that he doesn't know, and it doesn't make any sense for a perfect being to be ignorant of something. Ignorance is an imperfection. But now there's another reason why Descartes can't be the cause of this idea of perfection in himself. Why Descartes cannot be God, right? Why the subject, the I, cannot be God. And that is that Descartes cannot be his own cause. He can't have caused himself to exist. He can't, moreover, have caused himself to be a thinking thing. Right? He recognizes that his existence is dependent on something else, dependent on God. And this logic of dependence uh, is an important one because what perfection will mean is roughly that which is not dependent on anything else. And as we'll see, or what the natural light shows, is that anything that is not dependent on anything else must be the cause of everything that exists. All right. So I think that's where we'll leave it for today with Descartes and the third meditation. Um, in the next meditations, in the fourth, fifth meditations, we move from God to the rest of the external world, and we see how this uh, proof of something external to Descartes, along with the proof of the existence of truth and the recognition of the nature of truth, will lead to the possibility of affirming uh, one's judgments about the external world, not just one's perceptions, but one's judgments about what is. All right, until then.